We're back, Brian, and our guest, Matt Barbato, longtime guest, one of our favorites, NFL expert, owner of itsbeto.wordpress.com, soon to be itsbeto.com, as we were talking before the show. But Matt, always happy to have you. How's it going, my man?
Good. Thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm strapping together the pennies and the nickels and dimes for the domain name to my website. But yeah, everything's good. Thank you again for having me on. It's been a pleasure being on with you from day one. So yeah, happy to be back with you.
Yeah, we've come a long way. It's the show's changed over the time. We've had different co-hosts, different guests, different everything going on, and now different formatting. But always happy to talk NFL football, and that's really what we've got right now. College basketball is heating up, but football is still the talk of the town. Conference title games are here this upcoming weekend, and they are pretty much exactly as we had expected. Maybe probably midway through the season, once we realized that the Chiefs were very good and the Saints were going to turn it around. It is Saints Rams and Chiefs Patriots. I guess which of these games are you most looking forward to, because we've kind of seen this already?
I'm really excited for the Rams Saints game. I think that's going to be the better of the two. I think both games will be really good. Actually, I think they're really good matchups.
Mhm.
I believe they're both rematches, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken.
Yep.
So they should be very good games. It'll be interesting to see how these teams change their approaches, having played each other earlier in the year. But I mean, you can't really ask for much better than the top two seeds in each conference, the top four scoring offenses in the league. You get Mahomes versus Brady, new school versus old school. You get, and then it's the same thing in the NFC. You get Breeze
Yep.
versus Goff, and it's going to be a really really fun weekend. I mean, I've been telling people I'm hyped for this since yesterday. So it should be a lot of fun. You never know with the playoffs, I guess. I mean, the divisional round was kind of a dud, but I expect two really close, contentious matchups.
Yeah, and just to quickly recap how we got here, Chiefs blew out the Colts. That was never a game really at any point throughout the day. New England dominated the Chargers. It was 35-7 at the half, and the Chargers put up a couple points in the second half, and that made it look a little closer than it was. New Orleans beats Philadelphia on the just awful, terrible, worst possible drop for Alshon Jeffrey right into Lattimore's hands, and then the Rams took care of business against the Cowboys, running for close to 1 billion yards. So I guess let's start in the AFC. We'll go Mahomes versus Brady first. What do you think the key is for Kansas City if they want to win this game? This is the eighth straight AFC title game for the Patriots. Been there, done that. I feel like people write them off for dead every single year, and every year they just ho-hum their way through the playoffs all the way to the AFC Championship game.
Honestly, I think one of the most underrated aspects of the Patriots offense right now is James White. I mean, what did he have? 15 catches
Yeah.
against the Chargers. I think he's sort of the sneaky guy. I think when you think of the Patriots, you think about how we're going to stop Gronkowski first and foremost, and then
Mhm.
secondly, you think about Edelman. And they don't have really a really strong receiver on the outside this year, but James White has sort of become that secret postseason weapon. I mean, we saw what he did in the Super Bowl against Atlanta a couple years ago. He
Right.
is a vital part of that offense, and I think the challenge is going to be who is Kansas City going to have guard him out of the backfield, because he's going to get targets. Um, Offensively, I think it's just going to be the chess match between Andy Reid and Bill Belichick, because he has seen Mahomes once before this season.
Mhm.
I'm really curious to see who Belichick keys on as sort of that primary opponent who he seems to always take away. Will it be Tyreek Hill, the speedster? Will it be Travis Kelce? I think containing Tyreek Hill is a much more difficult task because of his speed. I mean,
Right.
double team him all game. I mean, even so, you can have him just run, horizontally from sideline to sideline, and he can still
Mhm.
burn you. So that's going to be the real challenge. I'm curious if Stephon Gilmore is going to be guarding him most of the game. Are they going to put him on Sammy Watkins? There's a lot of really interesting matchups. Obviously, the Chiefs won't have Kareem Hunt this time around. Will
Right.
Damian Williams and Spencer Ware be able to keep the chains moving on the ground? It'll be really interesting. It'll be a really fun game. Again, it's Andy Reid in the playoffs, so there could be a clock management issue. But
Of
Kansas
course.
City getting that monkey off their back with their dismal home playoff record, That's huge, and I think
Yeah,
that kind of takes a weight off of their shoulders. And I think it proves that Mahomes. I mean, we already knew he was legit, but getting that playoff win out of the way shows that this is a different Chiefs era. Not even team, just era. You know, transitioning from Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. And it's going to be, you know, it's you've got the old guard and the Patriots who have just figured out how to get there year after year after year. Will Mahomes be able to pull one more rabbit out of his hat and beat, you know, the model franchise for the past decade? That's going to be really. It's going. The storylines are crazy. I was kind of surprised that the AFC game got that later time slot.
Mhm.
Kind of disappointed by that, but I mean, it should be a really, really good game. And I think it's supposed to be like horribly cold temperatures in Kansas City. So we'll see how that impacts Showtime Mahomes.
For sure. I think you brought up a really interesting point with James White. I mean, you brought up a bunch, but this is the first one I wanted to talk about. I feel like James White is kind of the Patriots counterpart to what Kareem Hunt was, um, before obviously all the issues he had off the field. He is the catching aspect out of the backfield, that dynamic back, receiving back, and then Sonny Michel's really come along of late and found the ground game. So those two combined kind of feel like they can compete as one Kareem Hunt. Now without him for Kansas City, you've still got a couple weapons, but they're not nearly as versatile as Hunt was. And then defensively, I think Kansas City's given up 1 billion points this year. They get into shootouts and they just know their offense is going to end up either winning them the game or having a chance to win the game. I feel like New England's defense kind of turns it on as the season gets later. Do you see that becoming a big factor, or is this really just going to be an offensive firepower game?
Yeah, it's the Patriots. I mean, their personnel is not good defensively. I mean, they've got a couple star players. They've got a couple mainstays like McCourty who've been there forever.
Yep.
But the talent of the defense is not great. It's not as good as we've seen in the past 5 years or so. But it seems like Belichick always just has them prepared. He's the master tactician. I mean, he made it work with the defense. I can't remember if it was the defense they played against the Falcons or the Eagles. I think it was, I mean, both of them were pretty bad. I believe the one they had last year was pretty repulsive, because they had, and then Malcolm Butler got benched. So that defense is lacking in personnel too. But they find a way. They always seem to be prepared. They seem to know what to expect. And if you're not, if you don't have a ton of talent on defense, but you can still anticipate rather than react to where the ball's going, it makes the most mediocre defenses suddenly solid. So I think Belichick, I really do. I mean, I predicted Patriots Saints for my blog, when the playoffs started as a Super Bowl matchup.
Yep.
And just because Brady finds a way, Belichick finds a way. The Patriots will be prepared. You know that. If they can just make enough plays, contain the offense, and force a couple turnovers out of Mahomes, they'll probably win the game. And I think they'll be in a position to do it. I think Belichick will have his defense ready, especially having seen them earlier in the year. So he'll have some wrinkles for Mahomes that I don't think he's going to expect.
For sure. Obviously, we know which way you're leaning in both games at this point, but going over to the NFC, the Rams have run the ball extremely well, and C.J. Anderson has essentially come out of nowhere like a phoenix, rising from the ashes and, adding 50 pounds to his frame, looking like Eddie Lacy 2.0. What is the key if the Rams want to come in and steal a game and get to the Super Bowl here? I feel like the defense has a ton of talent, but they just never seem to put it together when they need to. And New Orleans is like a very bend, don't break kind of team where they have the firepower offensively to blow teams out, but they just don't seem to do it. And then the defense ends up helping them with a big play.
Yeah, I think the key for the Rams is going to be taking away Michael Thomas. I mean, that because the Saints, much like the Patriots, they don't, and maybe even more so than the Patriots, they do not have a number 2 receiver. I mean, Kamara, obviously, but they do not have a true number 2 receiver. It's kind of a hodgepodge of guys. It's, Traquan Smith and the tight end, I think Josh Hill is still there. Benjamin Watson. It's that kid from Cameron. I think he played at Northwestern, though, or maybe I'm thinking of a Patriots kid. But, they just don't have a ton of talent beyond Michael Thomas. Yet he still seems to catch 10 passes for 150 yards every game. He's kind of a shoo-in. So I'm curious to see what they do against him. If it's going to be Aqib Talib matching up against him, if it'll be Marcus Peters. Are they going to switch? Are they going to have someone shadowing him all game? Because honestly, I think if you can remove Michael Thomas from the game, it neutralizes New Orleans' offense completely. Because yes, Kamara and Ingram are great running backs, but I mean, we saw Dallas do it. And I'm not sure if the Rams, I would say they don't have as good of a defense as Dallas.
Yeah.
But that's part one. You have to contain Michael Thomas. I would double team him every time. I would throw a safety over the top, give him that shade coverage, and then challenge Drew Brees to throw deep downfield. We saw him miss a couple of deep throws against the Eagles last week. So that's not. He can still do it, but it's not automatic for him like it once was. So the second part is you need to have linebackers, and this is where the Rams might struggle. You need linebackers to be on Kamara the second he touches the ball, because if you give him even a foot of space when he catches the ball, he's gone. He's too good in open space. He's too nimble. He's too shifty. He is an outstanding. He's probably one of the best players I've ever seen in open space. He's that good. So the Cowboys game is kind of the blueprint for this. Whenever Kamara caught a pass out of the backfield, Leighton Vander Esch or Jalen Smith was on him. And if they didn't get him down on the first strike, then they had a gang tackle coming because they were able to slow him down. So I think that's the second key. And if you can do that, I mean, it's not – I make it sound like it's easy, but if you can do that, you can beat the Saints. Offensively, I mean, give it to Todd Gurley early and often. I think the Saints won't have Sheldon Rankins for this game.
Yeah,
I think he popped his Achilles. That's a huge loss for the interior of that defensive line. They do have a former Jet, Demario Davis, who's having a great year as their middle linebacker. He's a really, really good run defender. But there's just – you have to – I mean, and it's something that they should have done all regular season. Just keep pounding Todd Gurley, let the run set up the pass, and then have Brandon Cooks in his homecoming game go off and take the lid off the defense with a big play. That is going to be an outstanding game. I mean, Sean Payton versus Sean McVay. I can't wait for that one. The Saints, you're right. They seem to find ways to just make plays defensively. I mean, even against the Eagles, it seemed like they were reeling the whole game, and then Lattimore comes up with the pick. And, I think he had 2 picks in that game. So they've just, they do bend. They don't have a very good slot corner either. If the Rams had Cooper Kupp in this matchup, I think I would give the edge to Los Angeles, because PJ Williams is not a good nickel cornerback at all. But I think the Rams just need to keep feeding Gurley, give him 30 touches no matter what, and let the run set up the pass for Jared Goff, because we've seen in hostile environments and when he's under duress, he tends to crumble. So they need to really give a steady dose of Gurley on Sunday.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I think the biggest key that you mentioned was for LA defensively. If you can take, I mean, this is obviously a big if, like you said, but if you can take Michael Thomas out of the game or limit him significantly, the Saints, become incredibly pedestrian on offense. And that's maybe a little bit harsh, but I feel like, how many times have we seen Drew Brees this year throw for under 200 yards and not be able to put anything together because Michael Thomas hasn't had a breakout game?
I just want to bring up a stat. The Saints, so they lost to Tampa Bay in week 1. Thomas had 16 catches.
Yep.
In their other 2 losses this year, Thomas had 5 receptions for 40 yards against Dallas. And then he had 5 receptions for 29 yards against the Carolina Panthers, which I didn't even realize he played in that game because that was week 17. But I mean, he's had 7 games with at least 10 receptions. So I don't want to say the offense lives and dies with him, but it kind of does, because they have nothing else in the passing game. So yeah, that's going to be the really intriguing matchup, because Talib and Peters have been good, but then they've had moments where they've just been terrible all year. So that's going to be key. I mean, you eliminate Michael Thomas, you pretty much turn the Saints into a shell of itself.
Which is crazy because they've been so good this year. It's it was a remarkable turnaround. They had a terrible start to the season, but this is kind of the team we had expected coming from last year into this year. And now that they're here, it's so weird to see such a massive chink in their armor.
Right. And that's the one thing. I mean, here's what I'll say. Drew Brees, he's kind of made a career off of spreading the ball around.
Yeah.
So he, and you got to remember the Saints for a long time didn't even really have a reputable number one receiver after Marcus Colston was gone.
And he created Marcus Colston.
Yeah, Marcus Colston, and then they had Cooks. But he wasn't really he's not like a Michael Thomas number one receiver. He's like a deep threat who can catch 90 balls in a season. They didn't have like that 100 catch guy for a while. So Breeze knows how to spread the ball around. He can certainly do that. And that's important when, you're so, I mean, I'm looking at the stats right now. Thomas had 125 receptions. The next closest Saints receiver was Traquan Smith. And I'm excluding Kamara and also Ben Watson, who had 35 catches. Just pure wide receiver was Traquan Smith, 28 catches.
Wow.
So
that's tough.
If I'm defenses, I'm doubling him all day. And just, I'm doubling him, and I'm putting my fastest linebacker on Kamara every passing down. And I'm just saying, do your best and cover him, because as long as you're not getting torched by him and you're not, giving up deep wheel routes to Kamara, you've got a good chance. And I think the Rams are going to be able to do that. I think they're going to another matchup where I'm curious to see what the son of bum Wade Phillips does. I'm really excited for. Like, I haven't been this excited. Like last year, it was like Patriots and Jaguars, and we're like, oh, can the Jaguars actually get to the Super Bowl? Can the friggin' Jaguars do it? And then what was it? Eagles. Who was the last year? Eagles,
Vikings.
That was a horrible game.
Yeah.
So I'm genuinely like pumped up for Sunday because these games are going to be so good and these matchups are so intriguing.
Yeah, that is. I mean, we've got 3 football games left. These are 2 of them, and these are going to be 2 great ones. So we're very excited about these. Switching over more to the off season, big news today as before we were recording, Kyler Murray officially enters the NFL draft. There were rumors that he had demanded somewhere in the range of $15 million from the Oakland A's. We won't get too much into the decision itself, more into what do you think of his choice, and what do you think his prospects are in the NFL if he even goes and plays, but specifically the NFL draft.
I think he's played this exceptionally well.
I agree.
He never ruled out baseball. He never ruled out football. He just kind of played the season out. And I mean, if this was like a job interview for the NFL, I mean, he absolutely nailed it. I mean, he could not have played this any better. Now he's got a choice, and it's not a rock and a hard place he's between. It's between like 2 plush couches,
right?
And like and a beanbag chair or something. He's in a great spot. For health reasons, I'm surprised he chose football. But at the same time, it's easier to get that guaranteed money as a first-round draft pick in the NFL than it is as a baseball player.
Right.
So I understand why he's demanding what he's demanding out of the A's. And personally, I think he'd be the number 1 overall pick. I really do. And I don't know. I was talking about this with a friend.
Wow.
And he seemed kind of taken aback by it. But there's really there are a couple of stud prospects in this class, but you really haven't heard much buzz about, any really. And I know it's not even draft season yet, but usually you enter a year and there's kind of these guys who are sort of heralded draft prospects. And there are certainly a few of them. But I think after the season Kyler Murray put up, after the season that Patrick Mahomes is putting up right now, that's what we got to remember. Patrick Mahomes, if he beats the Patriots on Sunday, he's elevating Kyler Murray's draft stock because he is kind of similar. I mean, and I hate comparing everything to Mahomes, like, he's the next hot thing since sliced bread, but they are similar. I mean, they play in the Big 12. They play sort of a similar unorthodox style. Their arm angles and stuff are all odd, and the trajectory of his throws, and because he's a baseball player, he can throw the ball a variety of ways. I truly think, and because Dwayne Haskins is the best quarterback going right now. Right. I truly think he would be the number 1 pick, and that's tough to say right now because currently the Arizona Cardinals hold that pick, and they have Josh Rosen. Right. But if a team comes to the Cardinals and says, "We'll give you the exact same deal that the Eagles gave," I can't remember who they traded but the same deal that the Eagles gave for Carson Wentz, the Rams gave for Jared Goff. who's saying no? Especially with a team like the Cardinals that has a lot of holes, and
Yeah.
there are teams like the Giants, the Raiders. Um, there are quarterback. It's a weird draft because the top three, top four, I don't think have any needs at quarterback, but like teams 4 through 8 all could do it. The Jaguars, teams that are not necessarily picking that high who could make a trade up, and you could get 2 additional first round picks and only have to drop 5 or 6 spots and still get a really good player. And
Right.
today's NFL, when stockpiling picks is, I mean, look at what the Raiders are going to be armed with this year. Who says no to that deal when you have a quarterback and you can find a franchise-changing player later in the draft? So I think Murray's making a great move, and I think he's making that move kind of having in the back of his mind that he could become the #1 overall pick. Because I mean,
Yeah.
with the baseball career, which is a much safer path, it had to have been a tough choice for him to sort of back off on playing baseball professionally, especially because if you do make it as a baseball player, the potential to maximize your value is the highest in any sport because there's obviously
Absolutely.
a salary cap. So I think I think he's been advised really, really well in this situation. I think the people advising him are kind of not assuming, but thinking that given the landscape of the quarterback class, given the landscape of the draft at large, someone could trade up for him because he's a Heisman Trophy winner. He had a fantastic season, almost beat Alabama in the playoff. I think he'd be the #1 overall pick. We'll see. I could be crazy, but I don't see him. And if he's not the #1 overall pick, if the Cardinals keep the pick, I can't see him slipping out of the top 3.
Wow. That is a little more than I had expected. I definitely thought, first round pick is certainly possible, especially just given his playmaking abilities. And then you look at it a little closer and you see Baker Mayfield's stats from last year where he threw 4,600 yards, 43 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and rushed for 311. And then you look at Murray's 4,300 yards, 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and 1,000 on the ground. We've seen the run game for quarterbacks not necessarily translate as well to the NFL, obviously, given just better athletes, better competition, and things like that. But those passing numbers are hard to ignore, especially when you look at last year's #1 pick and how well he's doing from the exact same offense. I think it's getting legs. I mean, I think you're talking me into it more and more as I think about this and you keep saying things. So I was kind of expecting him to be like a Lamar Jackson type pick later first round, but there are a lot of teams that are desperate for a playmaking quarterback, and I can see him being that guy. And if Dwayne Haskins doesn't test as well as people expect, or doesn't show off as well on tape as people think, that can definitely be what happens. I mean, he could certainly be the top quarterback and top pick even.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I like Dwayne. I actually like Dwayne Haskins. I think, I think you think of the prototypical Ohio State quarterback, and you think of this guy who's mobile. You think of like J.T. Barrett or Cardale Jones. He actually is really good. His running is not his best strength. He's actually
Right.
a really good passer in the pocket. I think he could be a good pro, but I think it'd be crazy to think that Murray wouldn't go ahead of him. And if you're the top quarterback in a class, in this league that is so driven by quarterbacks, coming off of a year where you've got a guy like Mahomes who's making ridiculous plays left and right, who is a former baseball player who played Big 12 college football. I feel like people fantasize about quarterbacks. These NFL executives fantasize about finding the next Mahomes now.
Right.
So I think someone would trade up for him because, that's kind of the market we've created now where there's just this frantic race to make sure you get the guy. It wouldn't stun me if the Giants traded up to get Kyler Murray #1 overall. And it's a weird draft because there's not a team in the top 3 that desperately needs a quarterback, but you're kind of taking your chances if he slips beyond the 3rd overall pick. You got to make a move. So if you're the best quarterback in a light quarterback draft class and the top 3 teams all don't need quarterbacks, that's kind of conducive conditions for a trade up because the teams picking in the top 3 are going to be looking for that. If I'm the Jets, I'm totally calling teams to see if they want to trade down. So I mean, it might not happen, but I have a feeling just the way that these NFL executives, I mean, the Bears traded up for Mitchell Trubisky, for God's sake. He is
Don't
not
you
as good
dare
as
slander Mitchell
I think
Trubisky.
Kyler Murray might be a better quarterback than Mitchell Trubisky already. So
I'm not going to say anything.
I know I'm a Trubisky downer, and we can get into that later. But I think there's a chance he would be the #1 overall pick, as crazy as that might sound right now.
I mean, it definitely took me back, but I can see the logic behind it. The more you talk about it, the more I see it. Speaking of the Bears, just coming into the season, I think we both probably had the same expectations for this team, and it wasn't much. Where do you think they go from here? You know, what obviously devastating loss, but there are a lot of positives to build on. You obviously are not as high or as bearish or bullish, excuse me, on Trubisky as I am. What do you see for next year with this team, especially? I mean, the schedule, the games themselves, the opponents have been released, but the games themselves haven't. What do you think about this team, real quick, moving forward?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're naturally going to face a tougher schedule because they're going from worst place in the division to first place. So you're going to face a few
Right.
tougher teams. I think the biggest challenge for these upstart teams is when defenses get film on you, how do you adapt? And what I will say is I think Matt Nagy is going to adapt. I think he's more like a Sean McVay. Not saying he is Sean McVay, but I think he's in that similar mold. I think he's a really innovative coach.
More
I thought he
McVay
was
than Chip
tremendous.
Kelly.
What's that?
More McVay than Chip Kelly.
Right, exactly. Yes. Like he's not going to stick to just because it worked last year doesn't mean it's going to work this year, and he knows that. So I think there's going to be, it'll be the same core offensively, but there'll be some nuances and there'll be some, reflection. And I think what my biggest gripe with Nagy was, and I wrote about this on my site. I just thought he coached a horrible game in the playoffs, and I was kind of ripping him afterwards. I thought the whole year it was like the whole year he sort of ignored Trubisky's flaws as a passer. And then in the playoff game, it was like he realized he had a limited quarterback and he didn't cater the offense to him at all. I think you're going to see more of that because I don't know. Trubisky, I think his best strength, and let me know if you agree with this, I think his best strength is his athleticism and his mobility. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think he can make the mid-range passes pretty well.
My point is that's kind of a problem, and I think like Lamar Jackson and different quarterbacks. I'm not saying Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar Jackson's kind of bad, but I just think Trubisky, when your best trait as a quarterback is your ability to run, I don't think that's a great sign. That doesn't mean he can get better, but so many times throughout the season, his mechanics seemed kind of wild. He kind of overthrows passers down the sideline, especially. Getting off of the first read is something that I know has been brought to light a lot throughout the year. I think he's got a nickname like First Read Mitch or One Read Mitchell or something. That's a problem. I mean, I think, and I don't remember the exact stats, but his numbers dramatically fall when he's passing to anyone who's not his first read. So that's a problem. He's got to be able to scan the field better, and that will come. I mean, we got to remember he's only made 20-something starts now in his professional career, and he only played 13 games in college as a starter. So that I'm not writing him off as a prospect. I'm just saying I don't think his ceiling is very high because at some point the mechanics are kind of what they are. And while he is incredibly mobile, and I mean, he did get the Bears to 12-4 in a division title. So you can't, if you can get that every year from Mitchell Trubisky, you can take it. But I was saying this when the Bears were in the playoffs. I kind of felt like this playoff run, they kind of had to play it like the Jets did with Mark Sanchez, where it was pound the rock, win with defense, have your quarterback make throws when you need to, but don't stretch him too far. And I feel like Nagy kind of did that to a degree, but like not giving Tariq Cohen any carries was kind of inexcusable. I just thought the aggression that guy coached with all year was missing in the playoffs. Having said all of that, I think the Bears are in a really good spot. I mean, don't they have like 10 or so they have a ridiculously high number of defensive players locked up who are like core members of that starting defense. Losing Fangio obviously sucks. But I actually think Chuck Pagano is a pretty good replacement. If nothing else, I think he can kind of maintain what's already there and keep this unit as a top 5, top 10 unit. But it's going to be harder. I mean, it's going to be you're going to be playing. I guarantee the Bears play at least 4 primetime games next year. Guarantee.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a given because they're the sexy team now. They're going to be a Super Bowl favorite. You just know it. There's going to be a lot of buzz and hype surrounding the team, and there's going to be a lot of defensive coaches who now know how they operate. So it's going to be harder, but I think they're in a good place. I mean, I would expect playoffs next year. I don't expect them to tail off, and it can happen in the NFL. I mean, we've seen it, so many times.
The Jaguars.
The Jaguars. Look at the Falcons. I mean, 2 years ago, you thought the Falcons were like the next dynasty in the NFC. They're terrible. The Panthers, they haven't gotten it together. So it can happen, but I think they're so good defensively. If they can just stay healthy and if Pagano can kind of just keep the status quo and keep the defense playing well, and Khalil Mack is Khalil Mack, there's no reason why they can't repeat as NFC North Division winners.
Absolutely. I think I agree with a lot of what you said. The Mitch stuff, I'll just let it go just because.
Are you a believer?
I am. I'm a big time believer. Sure. He less interceptions, better QBR, better completion percentage than Aaron Rodgers in his first full season starting, and those are the numbers I will die after. I don't know. I thought he improved. Not as much as I would have liked, but he certainly showed improvement throughout the season. And I think Nagy, like you said, was just too conservative in a playoff game. You're a home team, didn't expect to be in the playoffs. No one expected to have a home playoff game, playing the defending Super Bowl champs. You got to put your balls on the table and make some plays. And they never did it.
That was really disappointing. And I watched it with a group of my girlfriend's family members at the game. And I just kept saying how, like, they're not pushing it downfield. And the one drive they did score a touchdown was when they took some shots. Yep. And even the drive leading up to, we won't even mention the rest of it, the mistake of our friend Cody, but that throw he made to Allen Robinson, that was a
great throw.
So he's capable of it. And I'm not. It's weird because I don't think very highly of Trubisky, but I also thought the game plan by Nagy was really, really rough.
I think it held him back almost.
Right. It was like they had the training wheels off of him all year, and then they just, like, the playoffs
threw him back on.
They threw it back on, and that's okay if you've got a good plan with the training wheels. I mean, you can still go at a high speed with the training wheels, just like you would a normal bike. But yeah, that was what disappointed me, and that's why I wrote about it. Because usually, I mean, I haven't done a lot of Bears writing lately, but that kind of compelled me because I was like, this guy just kind of lost his balls, like you said, which is sad.
Exactly.
I think he'll learn from it because I think he is a really, really good coach, and I think the future is bright for the Bears. And I think Trubisky can be like a 25 touchdown, 10, 12 interception guy with the rushing statistics.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I mean, in his press conference today, this is the last bit on the Bears, I'll say, he did say, like, this year was offense 101. Now we're taking it to the next level because everyone understands the lingo. We're bringing back most of the core of the offense. We can go to more, more in-depth, more difficult, complex things on the offensive side of the football. Hopefully that doesn't mean more gimmicky, because I feel like you get into the red zone and he got super gimmicky and it just cost them points more than it helped. But if it means a step forward, in terms of creating a more dynamic offense, maybe pounding the ball with Jordan Howard on 3rd and 1 instead of throwing a wheel route to Tariq Cohen, that would be way better in my opinion. But I mean, it's all yet to be seen, as this is a second-year coach with essentially a second-year starting quarterback.
Or how about bringing out Khalil Mack on a 2-point conversion that was, it ended up being one of the most pivotal plays of the game. I mean,
and running a jet sweep instead to Taylor Gabriel.
And that was a horrible play call because that was to Gabriel, right? And he's the smallest guy in their offense by far, and he's going up against this Philadelphia front that's massive. I mean, they were consistently getting 3 yards a carry with Howard too, and it wasn't pretty, but it was working. Not to dwell on that game too much. I'm curious. I'm not trying to like flip the role and be host, but I kind of think Jordan Howard's kind of bad. I think he's, and I don't think he
doesn't fit this offense at all.
Right. So he's got what? He's got the 1 year left on his contract, or maybe 2 more.
One left.
He's got 1 left, and I'm looking at it. It looks like they'd only have to pay him $62,000 if they cut him. I mean, I'm sure he's a nice player to have, but in today's age where you can find that star running back in the 3rd round, I don't know. I mean, I kind of think about cutting him.
My fear is that they're going to get rid of Howard to bring in Kareem Hunt. That
I
is
heard they're considering that.
That's my worst nightmare because I love Jordan Howard. I think he's a great guy, great football player. Doesn't fit the scheme necessarily, but I feel like that's something that Nagy should be changing instead of like utilize what you have. Don't build a scheme and then be like, oh, well, I need this guy, or otherwise it won't work. And, just pound your head into the wall for 17 weeks. Utilize him. He's got one more year. If they know they're not going to use him, then, if you want to cut him, cut him. Otherwise, I'd try and trade him, get anything for him if you're going to get rid of him. But because there are teams out there that desperately could use a running back. But I think he's a good player for what he is. He's a workhorse. I mean, he is mid 2000s running back. He'd be making millions upon millions of dollars doing what he does.
For sure. That's what I don't like about him. I don't think he's a modern NFL running back, which is unfortunate, but he reminds me too much of like LeGarrette Blount.
He feels like Matt Forte 2.0 to me, like a patient back, find the gap, but he's a bigger body than Forte was.
Yeah. So no, and the Kareem Hunt thing, that you know what, he's not worth the risk because you can find Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round of the draft. You know what I mean? You can find Tariq Cohen in the 6th round was he drafted? 5th round?
4th?
Okay. I thought it was later, but you can find. I mean, if you just look at like the top 10 running backs in the league now, and look at what round they were drafted, and you've got the obvious studs, the Gurleys, the Bells, the Elliots, but I mean, you can easily get a top 10 running back in the 4th round of the draft. So I don't know why they would even inherit that risk, because honestly, Kareem Hunt's a really good player. The PR nightmare that would ensue. That is so not worth it in today's age, where you just can get ripped to shreds and nobody forgets about it because it's always going to be saved in an archive on the internet. It's not worth it. Just
100% agree.
Just find someone else. Mark Ingram. I think Mark Ingram would be a great fit for that offense, and he'd be affordable.
He's an interesting piece, that's for sure. I mean, there are a lot of guys out there that they could kick the tire, like end the Taquan Mizell experiment forever. That guy stinks.
That's another thing. Why is he taking snaps in the playoff game? Him and Cunningham.
No idea. I love Benny Cunningham, but only as a blocking back. Like, I think he picks up a great blitz, but other than that, he should not be touching the ball.
I mean, if you got to spell a guy, that's one thing. But when Tariq Cohen gets one carry and you got Mizell and Cunningham taking snaps from him, that's stupid.
Yep. But now you know my life.
That was a Bureau Bears conversation, man. That's okay. Hey, we got to dwell on and then move forward. So, but I really do think they'll be in a good spot. I think the future's bright. I think tickets are going to cost $300 a game. So good luck trying to attend one.
Yeah.
But I think you'll enjoy watching them on your TV.
I agree. As we move forward and close it out, let's talk a little offseason coaching changes. Your team made it a hire. Former Miami Dolphins coach heads over to the Jets, Adam Gase, and boy, did he have an interesting press conference today. Yeah. The eyes, man. The eyes are everywhere.
He's an ugly guy. It's just the peak. It's the perfect way for a Jets head coach to start. Like everyone thinks he's a robot. He looks like a freak. He doesn't look like he knows football. He looks like a, custodian at your, local high school who, got mixed up with a girl in the bath. Okay, I'm not going to go down that road. It's not, I don't know. I went through a very weird swing with this hiring because I wasn't expecting it. Mm-hmm. They announced the news what was it, last Wednesday or Tuesday, and I was kind of like, what the hell? I was kind of surprised by it. I didn't expect it, but I didn't hate it. And then I admit my opinion sort of changed because of Twitter, but you go on Twitter and you see so many people just ragging on it. Like, I don't know if you were following Jets Twitter at all, but like
a little bit.
It was bad. Like, the reaction was bad. And, I don't try and get influenced by like Joey, bag of donuts with 10 followers and an egg avatar. But you see that stuff in such a high quantity, and you're kind of like, whoa. And then I saw guys like Louis Riddick who were like, what do the Jets do? Respected opinions.
Right.
One of my friends who I, have on my Jets podcast back in the day, he was kind of panning the hire. So then I wrote it. I wrote a story about it, and I was kind of like calm throughout it and trying to rationalize it. And then I just went back in and started editing it. And once I heard Dowell Loggins might be involved, I wanted to cry. And then like, this is like after like I had a night's sleep, this is like 12 hours later, I kind of compartmentalized it in my head and rationalized it. And there's just it's fine. That's my that's my summary. It's fine. I think Adam Gase is taking this team to a Super Bowl? No. Do I think he can make the Jets competent? Yes. And the headline to my first article, which was like super knee jerky, was Jets make a coaching hire that I would have loved 4 years ago. And that's true because
Yeah,
we do forget that Adam Gase was Sean McVay
he was.
before Sean McVay was a thing. He was sort of the hot shot coming out of Denver when Peyton Manning had that historic season. When the Jets, I remember when the Jets were hiring a coach in 2015 before they hired Bulls, I really wanted them to kick the tires on Gase. I thought he would have been a nice hire back then. And then he kind of went to Miami, and that sort of his reputation sort of diminished in my mind. Granted, but there's so many factors. He did get to the playoffs. He went 10-6 his first season.
The
Ryan
Tannehill
kind of
issues.
sucks.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if you're asking me right now, would I rather have Tannehill or Sam Darnold? It's Darnold, and it's not even close. There was there was rumors that he kind of lost the locker room and got into problems with the front office. But you got to remember the Dolphins are kind of like a cluster down there. They're kind of a mess of an organization too. I mean, they
Yeah.
still have Mike Tannenbaum within their organization. The
They
owner
do.
is kind of a meddler, Stephen Ross. He's kind of a meddler with the team. So I think the Jets, and this is crazy to say, but I think the Jets have a little bit more structure, which will help. He's not going to have control, any say over the 53-man roster. I think that's going to help. I think he's just going to be able to coach. And he's an offensive guy, or so we think. So I'm hopeful that we're getting the offensive innovator who, had a bad first coaching experience and has learned and has grown and will bring what he learned in that second opportunity with a quarterback that genuinely gives me hope for the future and a roster that I think has some talent on it. And, then they have $100 million in cap room and they have the third overall pick. So there's no excuse for a lack of improvement. I don't care if it's a new coach. So they have to win more games than they did this year. And I think they could float around 8-8, 9-7. I think they'll be better. But I don't know. I mean, it's tough to really get all on board with this hire when you saw what he did in Miami.
Yeah. He's an interesting guy. Like I agree 100%. I've been saying it for a while that he was McVay before McVay was McVay.
Yeah.
Which is a tongue twister, but it's true. Like he was the young offensive mind for a little while in the NFL, and he did great things with Manning. And he even had he coached Jay Cutler to a career year. And people were saying if you can do that, like that is like painting the Mona Lisa. That's the toughest thing that anyone can do. Even though I was also a Jay Cutler guy, but. There were
I think you just have a thing for Bears quarterbacks, man.
Maybe. I think I was sold a bad bill of goods on Jay Cutler, and I just didn't want to give up on it. It was like I sunk too much money into a bad hand of poker, and I just saw it all the way through. But
did you have trouble giving up on Grossman and Orton too?
No, I never liked Rex Grossman. I actually thought Kyle Orton was worse.
Okay. All right. So it's not just a love story between you and Bears quarterbacks. That's good to know.
No. This was Jay Cutler is the first one I actually truly loved. Wow. And I still do. Like, I love the guy. Green Bay, Arizona, and Denver all hired new head coaches. I'd say Vic Fangio was a long time coming for him. He goes to Denver. Green Bay hires LaFleur from Tennessee. And then Arizona goes out and grabs Cliff Kingsbury, who picked Davis Webb over Baker Mayfield as his starting quarterback. He had Patrick Mahomes and still had a losing record at Texas Tech. What the hell did the Cardinals do?
Yeah, I don't have any idea. I mean, listen, the Cardinals will score points. Josh Rosen will probably be okay. They will put up points and they won't defend anybody. I can't remember who they hired as their defensive coordinator. Was it Vance Joseph? They hired a pretty respected defensive guy.
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was Vance Joseph. And before he kind of like had a horrible tenure in Denver, he was a pretty good defensive coordinator for the Bengals. But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to work. It was Vance Joseph.
Yep.
So it'll be like McVay. He handles the offense and the game management, and he won't involve himself in the defense at all. That'll be Wade Phillips' job. But I mean, you can't tell me if Adam Giggs has a bad body of work, then how can you say that Cliff Kingsbury was a good hire for the Cardinals? I understand. I understand he has coached some really good quarterbacks. And again, another guy who's kind of getting his value propped up by Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the power Mahomes has in this
Yeah.
league right now, it cannot be underestimated.
Patrick Mahomes raises all ships.
Seriously. I mean, he's gonna maybe Andy Reid will get on a diet because of Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you never know. I mean, miracles can happen, but I just don't see this working. I mean, he was terrible. He didn't coach defense at Texas Tech, and
Not
I
at all.
understand. And I kind of ripped the hire on Twitter, and people are like, "Well, he couldn't recruit at Texas Tech, and he couldn't do this." And then people are making excuses for him.
Mike Leach was great at Texas Tech.
Exactly. It's not that hard to win in the Big 12. It's not that hard to win 9 games, 8 games a season in the Big 12. So, I mean, it'll be exciting for a year or two, and Rosen might get better, but Rosen also was not. I mean, in just from studying him in the draft, he's not Mahomes. He's not Mayfield.
No.
He's not mobile. He was the least mobile first round quarterback in the entire class.
Mhm.
That's not his game. And I don't know if he can lead you through an air raid offense like Mahomes did. They're just different skill sets. So we'll see. I mean, the Cardinals will, I mean, I can't wait to bet the over in every Cardinals Rams game for the next
Right.
2 years. So that'll be exciting. But yeah, I don't think it'll work. I think they have a lot of flaws on that roster too. I mean, they've got Rosen, they've got like the ageless Larry Fitzgerald, and they've got David Johnson. And Christian Kirk, I think, could be a nice player,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they don't have shit after those guys.
Mhm.
And defensively, they're kind of older. Patrick Peterson's still a stud. We'll see if they bring back Chandler Jones, but yeah, they're aging on defense, so they're gonna the Cardinals will lose games 42-45 next year, and it'll just be like Texas Tech all over again. Just all I'll say is bet the over in every Cardinals game.
Yeah. My last question, I guess, before we close up is if Cliff Kingsbury coaches them to a worse record this year than Vance Joseph did, do they fire? Or excuse me, Steve Wilkes.
Oh, yeah,
do they fire him?
No, because I think it's too high profile of a hire to give up on it so easy. Unless they're like 0-16 and Rosen throws like 47 interceptions and everything just goes to hell. No, Steve Wilkes will be like the biggest footnote in NFL coaching history. I mean, that guy. I mean, he probably didn't get a fair shake, but like that was the
Not
most.
at all.
That was the most boring hire when they made it, and now it's like the most unceremonious departure. It's just over. That was okay.
Right.
Thanks for coming, Steve. Yeah, the teacher's back now from leave, so you can go.
Yeah. I guess this will be the final question, but how long do you think his leash is there? How long will they put up with Cliff Kingsbury? It's
Depends
a 4-year deal with a 5-year option.
Depends how much all the old retirees in Arizona like him. I don't know. No, I say I think you give him 3 years.
Okay.
3 years. You've got a young quarterback. Let him develop the offense. Get some more talent in there. They need an offensive line too. Their offensive line is trash.
Mm-hmm.
If the Cardinals go like 8-8 every year and they're scoring 40 points a game, I mean, it's kind of hard to say, hey, we might not be able to find better. We might not find better. So
right.
I think he gets 3 years, and if they're like still in 5-11 territory, then he's done.
Got it. Well, Matt, we appreciate the time. Again, you can check them out at itsbeto.wordpress.com, and hopefully we'll have you back on soon.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for having me. Sorry for kind of raining on your Trubisky parade.
All good.
I appreciate you having me on as always, and look forward to talking to you soon.